all my life, I've actually always been a late bloomer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay because everything is in divine time. And when we release the expectation of supposedly achieving or having things at a certain chronological age, well, then that sets us up for disappointment. So when we allow the awakening or the curiosity to expand later in life, well, that's actually perfect because the way that I can describe it gives women in a similar chronological age group hope. I didn't like the person I was because I didn't have the skills or the tools to process those emotions. And when I start going back down into that dark place, it's like, this isn't who I am. I don't want to be that person. So then I would go right back on the medication because the body is an amazing organism and can take care of itself very well and can heal itself when we give it what it needs.
Welcome. I am Claudia Noriega-Bernstein, abundance coach, author, and host of the award-winning Don't Shrink to Fit podcast, which recently won the Woman in Podcasting Award in the coaching category. Over the past 15 years, I have the privilege of connecting with women from around the world, and I am here to share all the tools I have learned along the way to help you uncover new possibilities in your life. In this space, you will hear impactful stories from women who have walked in similar shoes, sharing their wisdom and insights. Together, we will explore your passions, reveal your inner gifts, and embrace possibilities you may not have thought were within reach. Let's grow beyond limits so you never have to shrink to fit again.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to have Chris Dyer today. She's a friend of mine. I'm going to tell you in a little bit how we met, but she's a highly respected in-demand leader, speaker, writer, and a multi-dimensional spiritual scientist devoted to elevating conscientiousness and empowering others on their path of transformation. Thank you for being here, Chris. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you, Claudia. And I'm so blessed that we've been reconnected so recently again.
Yes. So Chris and I had a blind date. We were, we were connected by somebody that we both know, and she thought we were going to be a perfect match. So this was so funny because I remember that we kind of communicate through email, right? And then I FaceTime you instead of calling you, and you're like, "Oh, we're gonna see each other. Okay, fine." I wasn't ready for that, but whatever. And we wing it, like we wing life, right?
Exactly.
And from then it was like, good, we're in each other's lives. So this was great. Well, before we start, I'm curious to learn what is a multidimensional spiritual scientist.
Well, I went through majority of my life knowing that there was more, and I always knew that I was more than a three-dimensional individual. I didn't have enough information to really understand what that meant. And we're told there's up to 12 dimensions, maybe more of an individual as we expand and we delve into deeper levels of consciousness and awareness and understanding. And initially, when I was a child, I knew I'd either be a teacher or a scientist. Well, guess what? I ended up being both.
Wow.
And I love science because science, and that's my background, my education, my experience, my expertise is in healthcare, the health in the human body,
Mhm.
and physical science. Well, what I've learned now that I've explored my spiritual dimension is that things that happen in the 3D physical dimension can be explained in the spiritual dimension, and conversely, right? Things that we understand spiritually with
Right.
energy and the way the mind works, the body works, and just that essence of who we are, that can actually also be explained in science. So knowing and understanding science helps me explain in a way that's logical and relative and relational. People can relate to when we say stories based in using things that happen in science. It can be proven, it can be repeated, it's duplicatable. And when we can do that, that's how we hit home. We can explain the spiritual concepts that you and I understand in a way that lands that people maybe are new to
Mhm.
exploring spirituality or higher levels of consciousness. So that's when I say spiritual scientist. that's where it comes from.
Right, because if you think about science, it's very 2 + 2 is 4. I don't know how you say that in English, but it's very clear. But
Right.
spiritual is different because when you are in the spiritual energy, everything is unknown. You don't know what you're going to find out about yourself, about the energy of the other people, about the experience. So that's when I was curious to read, there was scientists. But one of the things that got my attention about you in learning about you was that you have an awakening older. It wasn't like you've been working on this awakening since you were in your 30s. You got to be in your midlife and you had an aha moment, right?
Exactly. And part of my story, I don't know how much you remember. There's a very impactful reason, and all my life I've actually always been a late bloomer,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay because everything is in divine time. And when we release the expectation of supposedly achieving or having things at a certain chronological age, well, then that sets us up for disappointment. So when we allow the awakening or the curiosity to expand later in life, well, that's actually perfect because the way that I can describe it gives women in a similar chronological age group hope, or even people younger, right? It's releasing the expectation of what's supposed to look this way. Well, no, it's not. It says who, right? We
Right.
get to throw out the rule book, and that's
Yeah.
part of what you help women do is help them answer to their own.
Oh, you're talking my language.
Exactly, exactly. So you and I definitely speak the same language, and we've always known that about each other.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I've been releasing decades of programming and conditioning, and that's part of doing the work is auditing myself, my thoughts, my biases, my prejudices, my opinions that were handed to me, and question everything. Curiosity is actually a superpower
Yes.
to
Yes.
to your awareness because follow the energy, follow and emulate the people that you admire, and look at how they're acting and they're behaving and taking on the different energies and being able to flex and flow with their environment and with life. It allows us to relax, to surrender, right? Open up our hands when we can surrender and just allow things to happen in their own time,
Mhm.
then we can release that anxiety and that stress and truly step into our power.
I agree with you 100%. I think that, when you allow to detach with the conditioning from the conditioning, when you say, you know what, I understand that I have been living my life up till today adopting ideas or being domesticated by whatever I was taught, or my parents, my teacher, my coaches, my older generations, and now I want to be myself and I want to find out what I like and how I feel and how I am supposed to feel, and you detach yourself from those conditionings, there is a whole new world available for you. And I get it that it could be a little scary because sometimes we stay in situations that are not good for us just because they're comfortable. But having the courage to get curious and trying to find out what's there for me. Let me get curious. Let me find out. Maybe you find out that there is nothing there that you really want and you want to go back to your conditioning because that's where you're happy. Every person is different. But I, like you, had that opportunity, and I would not go back for nobody, for no reason, for no money, for no nothing, because I feel so comfortable in my own skin. One of the things I was talking in the retreat when I was talking about unbecoming was I love myself, and I don't have a problem saying it because that's part of the growth, accepting who you are and loving who you are and not have to apologize for who you are. The people that are meant to be in your life are going to be in your life, and they're going to embrace that version of yourself because they're going to understand that this is your better version. There's not going to be any judgment. If there is judgment, then you don't belong there. You need to go and find another tribe.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the last 5 years were more, you had a more awakening in the last 5 years. I believe you went out of the country, right? To
I
Mexico.
did. I did. It was a time in my life where I felt like my world was crumbling a little bit because of going around in those self-repeating loops and those patterns and not really paying attention,
Mm-hmm.
kind of being drug along. And I always thought I was a pretty smart woman, pretty intelligent. However, in 2019, I went to Mexico. A friend invited me, and this is also the time that I decided that I am my own soulmate.
Beautiful.
And so that was a very profound, actually, I've made some pretty profound declarations now that I'm accessing higher levels of consciousness. We actually have faculties that we don't use because we just don't have access to them biologically. So in 2019, I declared that I am my own soulmate and that I don't have to just live in one place to be happy and fulfilled in this. This didn't mean that I'm detached from my husband. I'm still very happily married, very emotionally bonded, respectful, caregiving wife to my husband. And this is a criticism that I use and I share frequently. The I love you and I love me too.
Mm-hmm.
That means
I
I
like
can,
to say I love you, but I love myself more.
well, sometimes, yes. Depends on what day
So
you
if
ask.
there is a tie, I know which side I'm gonna take.
Exactly. And I think, and this is for all individuals, not just women, not just men, not just any particular gender or whatever someone identifies as, is when we claim our sovereignness and reclaim ourselves as our soulmate, the universe conspires in our favor, right? Our brain starts looking for confirmation bias, right? And as they say, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. Well, at this time, there are lots of things going on simultaneously. I made that declaration for myself. I ended my 17-year dependency on antidepressants because the antidepressants were keeping me in an emotionally stable place where I wasn't able to process the full spectrum of emotions that we're meant to as human beings.
You have to
Emotions
go through the process, and those are crutches.
right. And I didn't know I had choices. I didn't have support, certainly not from my family. And many years prior, I recognized that friends were the family that I created for myself because I didn't have the support from family. There was a lot of, I suspect, a lot of generational things that I inherited, a lot of things just in that bloodline in general that weren't healthy. And so, unconditional love wasn't part of the conversation. Being able to express yourselves freely was not part of the conversation. So I grew up feeling very repressed. Emotions were stuffed down and I didn't have anybody to trust. I was an only child, never knew my father. So that's a whole setup. And it explains everything beautifully now that I understand how energy works and the emotions that we carry in our body. It's in our DNA, it's in our tissues. And so my healthcare background, I was actually in imaging sciences. So I know a little bit about like nuclear medicine, right? When somebody has a nuclear medicine scan, those isotopes that are introduced in the body, well, they have a half-life. They're radioactive. And that's how a nuclear medicine scan is read. Well, other toxic things that are in our body also have a half-life. It takes the body a certain amount of time to process that out. And so my hypothesis is probably after 17 years of using this pharmaceutical, I call it a pharmaceutical straitjacket for many reasons. It didn't allow me to process emotions. It didn't allow me to access higher brain faculties like our will, our imagination, our intuition, our memory,
It
perspective,
numbs you.
reasoning.
That's what it does. It numbs you.
It did.
It's like and I had this conversation once with my daughters, people that are they smoke pot during the whole day. Now, I mean, I rather smoke pot to go to sleep, and I'm very open about it. But I don't smoke during the day because I don't need to dope myself. I don't need to numb myself. I'm very aware of my emotions. I'm very functional. Um, but at night, my brain doesn't stop, and I don't want to take pills. I don't want to take a sleeping pill, and I had a difficult time sleeping. So that relaxes me to a point that I can disconnect. But when you are in antidepressants, that's what you do. You numb yourself, and that becomes an emotional crash, correct?
Right. So probably for about the first year to 18 months after I released, I went cold turkey, and I don't subscribe to that. For most people, they need to titrate that off, right?
Mhm.
And use a medical professional to help them make that decision to be safe. I made a decision because I had tried multiple times to wean myself off, but I knew a couple of weeks in that I didn't like the person I was because I didn't have the skills or the tools to process those emotions. And when I start going back down into that dark place, it's like, this isn't who I am. I don't want to be that person. So then I would go right back on the medication
Mhm.
again because I didn't have support and tools um, to understand why I kept dropping into those low vibrating energies.
Mhm.
But it's just like you said, using them as crutches is exactly what they are. They were emotional crutches for me. And we're not meant to walk on crutches for 17 years, right? So at some point when I put the crutches down, I had to learn how to walk all over again emotionally. I had to learn how to navigate, all the vibrations of the energies and the emotions and start understanding myself and getting really curious. And what's interesting is I belong to a women's group, and one of the premises is no drama. And actually, the no drama policy helped me identify the own drama that I was creating. Drama is not just between two or more people. It's what are the stories that we keep repeating in our mind.
Mhm.
And drama, as I understand it, is just a light form of residual trauma. Like a trigger comes up, well, that is a resident of former trauma.
Mhm.
And instead of being scared of it, I got curious. It's like, where's that coming from? Oh, I can pinpoint the memory when I felt that for the first time. And then when we can put a name on it, well, we take away its power. It no longer has power over us anymore. So I
Mhm.
was doing that, repeatedly, like when I'd meet somebody and I'd get curious. And that's part of how I healed myself from former trauma, drama, and then understanding, the frequency and the vibrational scale, like Stephen Hawkins,
Mhm.
yeah, David Hawkins, the vibrational scale. I use that as a tool to help me identify who I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up.
So when you were going through all that roller coaster of emotions and not even tapering down the antidepressants, just stopping at cold turkey, you also were dealing with the changes that every woman deal with because it was about that age, correct? So
Yes.
how did your hormones, what part your hormones play in all this?
Wow. So I don't I'm sure I was perimenopausal, and I'll just be blunt. For 10 years I was using an IUD
Mm.
as control, birth control. So I didn't have a period for 10 years. And then, I started feeling some different changes in my body, and I didn't really associate it with my emotions. I was associating it physically,
Right.
like a little bit of lethargy, a little bit of mood. I could sort of tell when my emotions would drop a little bit, but I think that's just what we get used to during the normal cycle, right?
Right.
Biologically, and I really didn't make the associations because I was really never a high drama person anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't grow up, even though my mother was a nurse for 50 years, we didn't run to the doctor for everything, right? We used common sense and used homeopathic or naturopathic things at home. So caring for myself physically was never a high drama kind of thing. I'm always kind of consider myself low key and low maintenance. But, things like low libido, that was happening.
Right.
And then
your emotional stage too changes a little bit, and you
yeah.
were not in the antidepressants anymore. So very easily you could say, you know what, I'm feeling like this because I'm not taking my pills.
Yeah, but the thing was, is once I walked away from that chapter of my life, that was a very long chapter, 17 years, is like, I don't want to go back. And so then I started looking for other hormonal replacement, like the pellets and things like that, and just using movement, healthy nutrition, water, sleep, rest, recovery, all those um, the basic things that the body needs to restore and take care of itself. And I used to be a fitness instructor and a personal trainer, and part of what I love to do is educate and teach people how simple the body really is. The body is an amazing organism and can take care of itself very well and can heal itself when we
Right.
give it what it needs,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's also paying attention to the overindulgences that we place on the body, right? The paradox of too much of anything is not a good thing. It's about the moderation for sure.
100.
Life is meant to be
I always
savored
say
and
that.
enjoyed.
I even said it to my husband, and to my kids many times. Nothing in excess is good, not even chocolate,
Right,
you know? And my husband will go, not even sex. I'm like, not even sex. Nothing in excess is good. You gotta have uh, um, a balance in everything you do. So then when you don't have it, you can appreciate it. If you have a lot of something all the time, then eventually you're not gonna appreciate it, no matter
right,
what it is. And when we go through menopause and our emotions are always in a peak, up and down, up and down. I have menopause twice in my life because they made me have a menopause when I was very, very young, because I had endometriosis, and they put me on a medication to stop my period the whole year. So my body kind of reboot, and got better. Um, so I was familiar with the symptoms, but the second time after I had cancer in my uterus, they had to remove I had a hysterectomy. And that's when the menopause really came full force. And I had some symptoms that I had, like the hot flashes and stuff like that when I was 24. But there were a lot of other, symptoms that I didn't have before. And I was not a nice person. I could recognize myself, and I was like, what is going on with me? Why I'm feeling everything so extreme. And one thing that I read, or I listened to you talking in another podcast, was that um, you came to the understanding that you were going to be the woman that you wanted to be, not the woman that you should be. And I think that's a very powerful statement, because talking about this and talking about what we were talking about at the beginning, we as women try always to be the women that we should be. And that is the biggest disconnect. And I work, that's my juicy stuff with my clients, because I see so many women that feel unfulfilled and stuck and unhappy. And the only reason why they feel like that is because they are not who they want to be. They are who they think they should be.
right.
You went through that process too, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, I I was a hungry student, and then, as I'm, you know, entering my emotional dimension, then understanding how emotions and energy are affecting the experience. And then at the same time, that was my creative part of my business. My studio is my learning laboratory. I was learning to reprogram my mindset with listening to podcasts and workshops and um, YouTube videos. Again, I was curious and I was following that energy, and I was finding people like yourself that I could listen to and reprogram my mind and reconnect those broken synapses from all those years of self-neglect. And creativity allows you to physiologically be in a state of flow. It allows you to regulate your nervous system, to take yourself out of that fight or flight or fawn or freeze, and to intentionally focus on breathing and relaxing your shoulders and removing that tension from your body. So creativity is a very important, impactful part of what I teach and model for other people, that it's like, where do I even start? You know, How about giving yourself a timeout and allowing yourself to do something fun, that's
Yeah.
creative, that isn't about your work, that isn't about serving someone else, and serve yourself for a change. Um,
And pause.
what's that? And pause. Yes.
Yeah, and pause.
Mhm.
And what are the ways people can reshape their mindset?
What are the ways?
What other ways aside
Oh,
of taking a pause or the things that you just share with us? What other things had worked for you to reshape your mindset?
giving myself quiet time every morning for reflection, self-reflection,
Mm-hmm.
introspection. Our society is so busy, so distracted, so scheduled that, I mean, even when we taught classes, it's like, here, we're teaching the class for 58 minutes. Here's your 2 minutes for rest and recovery. Now go out the door so you can rush and get to the next thing that's on your calendar, right? We don't give our bodies time to acclimate, to adjust, to process, especially when we've had loss, grief, right? We've had a major setback. We've moved. We've gotten married. We've gotten divorced. We've lost a loved one. We humans in our society have just been so conditioned to be human doings, we
Right.
don't pay attention to how we're being to
Yeah.
ourselves. And a great example, I like to refer back to the book that I read actually in 2001.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
This journey actually began much longer than
Much
2019,
longer.
right?
Yeah.
Right. I read the book, The Four Agreements,
Love it.
right? And that was the book that cracked me open. That was the book that allowed me to understand that, wow, I do have choices, and to understand how I had been programmed by my mother. And you and I have a very interesting synchronicity with the mother story, with the mother wound.
Mhm.
And that was like, oh my gosh, there it is. That's an answer that I had been looking for that resonated with me. But
Right.
in his book, he talks about the word sin. And sin not in a religious context, but
Mhm.
sin as in it means to go against yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of fun and silly that I like to take words that are common and I break them down into acronyms. So sin is SIN. So
Mhm.
for me, I interpolated that as self-induced neglect.
Wow.
So that's truly when we sin against ourselves, we're neglecting our basic needs. And we do it to ourselves. We betray ourselves. We neglect ourselves because we've actually been conditioned, encouraged to do that. We've been encouraged, particularly as women, to be selfless, to be serving of everyone else, making sure everybody else is successful and their needs are being met and they're healthy, and we get left with the crumbs,
Right. Oh, the burnt toast.
the burnt toast. And so we're learning better. And women are now doing a much better job of asking for what they need.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Ask and you shall receive. It says that in the good book, and it truly is. And when we ask the universe for guidance or support, we ask our friends, the tribe of trusted people that we have, where we support each other all day, every day when we ask, when we speak up and ask and declare that we are important.
Hi guys, I am so sorry to interrupt this incredible episode, but I had to jump in to share my big news. Brighter Days, the paperback edition, is officially available on Amazon today, July 29. This book holds 88 lessons that changed my life, 88 powerful tools I used to heal, shift, and take my power back. If you have ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, or like you have lost your spark, this is your sign. Go grab your copy now and start your journey towards the brighter days you deserve. And now, back to the show.
I think that I'm saying this because I went through a very um, profound journey to find myself, and I can see that you did the same just because you are in so many sisterhoods and groups with women. When I was younger, I didn't want to have anything to do with women because maybe because of my relationship with my mom, I would identify her with women are going to be A, B, and C. And I didn't want to have anything to do with them. And it wasn't until I found my own light, um, my own self, you know, my higher self. And I started loving myself and accepting myself, that I started mirroring myself in other women instead of mirroring other women in the women that have hurt me. I don't know if that makes sense to you. And I can
Absolutely.
see that you also went through a journey like that, because you are very much involved in a lot of women's sisterhoods, and you like to empower um, and help women. And I am the same way now, you know, but I wasn't like that in my 20s. I was very close up. If something, I wanted to break the mold. I was rebellious to what it was taught to me. And I didn't really knew what I wanted, but I did know what I didn't want. And that was enough for me. It was like, I know I don't want that. I know that it stopped with me. I know that I want to break that cycle. I know that I don't want my daughters to feel that way. So it's going to stop with me. What is the answer? I don't know. I will find out. But my why was always, I don't want that for me. And after I learn about myself and I discover things about myself and I accept myself, is when I started accepting and being open to learn from other women. Did you go through the same process?
Yes. And being raised an only child and not really being around a lot of people growing up, I craved friendships. I craved being around other people because I felt like I needed that. And it was almost a clingy crutch, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And when I stepped into my own power and I didn't I didn't need that. I didn't crave to be around other people. And yet, because I have been able to fulfill in myself the void
Mm-hmm.
that I was missing all those years, now I've attracted way more people because that energy, right? People want to be around people who feel good about themselves and
Yes.
convey that authentically. It's not arrogance, it's implicit confidence
Right.
and self trust. And for so many years, I didn't know how to trust myself because I was discouraged from expressing my feelings, for talking about it, for sharing emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, I was in so much self judgment and shame. I carried some of that from my mother, from family members, from whatever, and recognizing that part of the shame I'm carrying is not mine to carry. It was a
Right.
projection,
Mm-hmm.
right? A very low vibrating energy. The lowest vibrating energy there is shame. And I recognized in myself that people who carry shame, that keeps them from truly stepping into their power because there's remnants of that fear that's still lurking in the subconscious. And when we turn the light on and identify it and understand where it came from, we can
Mm-hmm.
release it. And when we release shame, guilt, fear, anger, then we can truly step forward in our power and transcend that story.
Yeah.
Transcendence is magical. And like you said before, you never want to go back. You can talk about the story. It's part of what shaped you, influenced you to be the woman that you are. You
Mm-hmm.
don't live in that story anymore.
No. And one of the things that you said, fear, I also do that with words, the acronym. And for me, fear is face everything and rise.
Yep.
So I have it in my studio, so it's okay to feel fear. It's a normal feeling. What is
Hmm.
not okay is to stay in the fear.
Right.
You know, you feel it and you understand it, you embrace it, and you tell yourself, I got this. You know, and sometimes I think we stay where we are, not because we are afraid of what is going to happen if we don't, but we are more afraid of the people around us, how they're going to react, if they're going to stop loving us, if they're going to stop liking us, if they're not going to accept us the same way. And that is a huge reason why a lot of people stay in the place they are, uncomfortable, unhappy, and stuck and fulfill. And I love when I hear stories like yours, because there is not an age to have that awakening and say, you know what? I don't care if I live 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, whatever amount of years I live in this place that doesn't make me happy. I am going to get curious and I'm going to go and look for what is going to make me happy. I'm going to go look for my own way of living. And I am going to become my soulmate, like you said. And I don't need anybody else. And whoever is around me is because I'm choosing to spend my time in my life with that person. But there is not a need attached to that. It's
Right.
I want to spend time with you. I want you in my life. I think that we have very similar relationship with our husband. My husband is his own person, and I am my own person. He's not my half. I don't believe when people go, you find your other half. What other half? I'm a complete person. I don't have a half. I'm not a 50. I'm an 100, and he's an 100, and we are two 100 that get along great, and we're like magnets. So that's fine. But I am not a half, and I refuse to believe that I am a percentage of somebody else. And I think
Well,
you feel the same way.
well, that was an old tale that we were told and sold when we were little girls growing up, that we
Mhm.
need somebody else to complete us.
Yes.
And that's totally inaccurate to your point. We are absolutely 100% whole when we acknowledge that. You know, the people in our lives are intended to complement us, not complete us.
Right. And that's the difference.
That is a
That
difference.
is a big difference. I love that you said that, because
Mhm.
that's a big difference. And it's in this generation, that want everything for tomorrow or today or yesterday. How do we teach this new generation to have that awakening, to have to pause, to learn to connect with their emotions? You said that one of your goals is you're committed to the awakening of the next generation of conscious leaders. How we do that?
First, by modeling what that looks like. Because until people are ready or they have a curiosity or an awareness that there's more, there's really there's not really room for them to expand. Expansion comes when you understand that there's more. I'm not satisfied. There's something, there's some curiosity. There's something inside of me that there needs more answers, right? And it's every generation brings its different set of advantages and disadvantages. And so I like to zoom out and look at what's going on generationally, Um, Gen X is an amazing place to be because we're shedding off the baby boomer roles and in paradigms. But you know what? Millennials, Gen Zers, alphas, and betas, they have different advantages and disadvantages than we do. Our
Wow.
advantages is we get to see the effects of how much distraction with technology is going on.
Mhm.
So what's going on with them is they're very disconnected from humanity. They
Yeah.
don't really know how to communicate and connect with another human being. So that's actually an opportunity to model and show what that looks like, right?
Yeah,
And
that is so true.
you know, we can't help everybody, and not everybody wants or needs or thinks or doesn't want to change, right? Change occurs in the individual when they want more. They desire more than what they're settling for. And until they're ready to take a step forward, to step out of the comfort zone, like you said, and be
Mhm.
willing to be be uncomfortable, to go through that messy middle of shedding the old layers, shedding the old identity to step into the new identity. Because it truly is a divorcing from your old self to
Yeah.
become the new self, right? I mean, we could be many iterations, many incarnations in the human flesh just by shifting our identity and what we aspire to be. And that's how our levels of consciousness also shift. We don't become better than someone else. We just actually go deeper within ourselves and have an awareness and understanding. And The only box that exists is the ones that we put ourselves in, right? The box has 6 sides. Well, I mean, we've talked about glass ceilings. That was a conversation 20, 30 years ago, breaking
Mhm.
through the glass ceiling. Well, when we truly step into understanding our power and becoming sovereign and reconnecting with our creator, there was never a box. There were never 4 walls. There was never a ceiling, and there was never a floor. And so in essence, we're kind of levitating through our dimensional space. We don't have limitations. We use technology to move our bodies around. Our body is a vessel to move around our consciousness and our spirit. And we have all of that at our disposal. And we get to use our creativity and our imagination to move around all over the place. And so when I said my second declaration is I don't need to live in one place. Well, in this day and age, we can be everywhere at the same time. I mean, your podcast is going to be listened to by hundreds or thousands of people at the same time. We have the tools and the technology to really scale our impact.
Yeah, and how beautiful that is, but also what a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
I think about that all the time, and that's why for me it's so important to have people like you in my podcast that can not only have a story, but also have juicy things to share. So if somebody is going through a similar situation, they can learn from it. That's the beauty of it. I wanted to ask you, you have had different careers, you have been successful in a lot of things that you have done. What is success for you?
Exactly where I am today, being in the present, being able to hold gratitude and grace for myself and trust myself that I'm being divinely guided on this path. And um, it's not about doing it all by myself. It's about collaborating with other individuals that have that higher consciousness. Um, I live in a state of awe of just admiring how it's actually, it becomes easier when we are being very present and allow what is meant to come to us. We don't have to chase, right?
Right.
We become the target instead of the arrow.
We attract.
We attract, exactly.
Mhm.
And that's it's a beautiful place to be. I don't identify with stress and anxiety because I've learned how to release that. It took, a bit of time and a bit of work. And work is you know, it's funny. I do a lot of kidding around, results only comes before work in the dictionary, right? You have to have the work to get the result. You have to have the work to have the success. And so there has to be inspired action. Well, there's only two types of energy. The potential energy is
Mhm.
the thought energy, and then the kinetic energy is the action. So nothing comes into the physical without the action piece.
Right. You gotta have one to have the other one.
And success doesn't come before work. Results don't come before work.
Right.
And
Right.
it's right thought, inspired action that allows us to step into that new identity.
But you need to be willing to step
Yes,
into that new.
that there's free will. Absolutely.
And what happened with the people around us that are not willing to do the work?
Then they will remain in the same state. Nothing changes until you change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough love, and it's I love to subscribe to the universal laws because they apply to everyone. I don't so much love man-made laws. I love the universal laws that explain how cause and effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
The law of gender. There's so many laws out there. We're not going to recite those here.
That's okay.
But no, I'm blessed for the opportunity. I know you do some amazing things here in the community with the women, and it gives me great joy to walk beside you in this journey to
Thank
help
you.
humanity, help men and women who are ready to change their situation, who are ready to do the necessary work to change, to aspire to evolve into the people that they want to be.
Yeah, yeah. And what a pleasure and what a privilege it is to work with women like you and I do and see those changes and see the growth and see their potential. I mean, that's my high, and I'm sure it's yours too. Just to be an instrument to display possibilities for them in front of them.
Mhm.
And that is a privilege. What I have a last question for you. What would you tell your 6-year-old if you can go back in time after everything that you have learned about conditioning, about domestication, about all that stuff? And by the way, you know, that book, The Four Agreement, I raised my kids with that book. And I came full circle not long ago because Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. I had the privilege to have him in my house because he wrote a book called The Mastering of Self in my book club. We were reading that, and one of our friends, Misty, knew him because she had worked with him in the past. So she brought him over, and we had an amazing evening picking his brain and talking about his dad. And it was like so great. I love their books. I think they're so insightful. I learn about that all the time, that my kids have to face a situation. I remind them of the four agreement, and it's like so easy to navigate the situation. Being in integrity, not assuming, doing your best, and being clear with your word. I mean, those are things that we should carry with us all the time, just because it makes us better humans. So I love that you mentioned that book. But tell me, what would you tell your 6-year-old?
You can trust yourself. Always trust yourself.
Yeah.
And it's part of the conditioning and the repressing that dims that light. That light is the intuition, right? And and as we do the work, we actually ignite and turn up that flame so that we're blazing all the light. You know, we can't keep it from others because it can't be contained anymore.
Right.
It's been welling up all this time.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to invite everybody to go to your website because you have the 7 secrets of success there that they can download. So I'm going to have your information in the description of the show. Is there anything you would like to add? Do you have anything that you want to promote? Is something juicy happening in your life right now?
Well, I have a lot of juicy projects, yes.
Yeah.
So I've been published in 4 anthologies, and I
Mhm.
promised myself and everyone else that every subsequent book that comes out will have my name on the front cover. And so I'm working on a children's book right now. The projected completion is in June. So that'll be showing up on the website. But I have 5 or 6 books inside of me that need to come out. But you know, having a lot of fun doing some partnerships and collaborations,
Mhm.
and it fills my cup to be able to serve in lots of different capacities. So thank you for the opportunity to share on here today.
Yeah, I loved having you. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you all for listening to the Don't Shrink to Fit podcast. If you like this episode, please write a juicy comment below and subscribe to my podcast. Remember, we can only fly if we embrace each other. Until next week, be happy, be safe, and be kind to yourself.